let's move on to round number 2. Kate, what do we have for round 2?
For round number 2, we have Navy-funded researchers discovering locusts have sensitive horns that can distinguish between the scents of TNT and other explosives. So we got bomb-sniffing locusts, my friends. It's a development that could one day herald the deployment of bomb-sniffing, electronically augmented bug swarms. The research aims to tap into the antenna and brain power of garden variety bugs to create an advanced bomb detection sensor.
Now, can I stop you there before you continue?
Yeah.
When I was reading this article, this is the most intrigued military news that I have read in a long time. Think about those 3 paragraphs that you just read, that one day we could have the ability to control robotically controlled bugs in a combat zone. Like if you send a locust swarm at me as a dog handler and I'm walking down the street and you're just like, get them to a swarm of locusts, I'm surrendering. I'm not going. No matter what, I would be a conscientious objector.
There you go. Yeah, people don't love the bugs. They call them biorobotics, mixing technology and bugs pretty much, and like nature to do this kind of stuff. And locusts, which differ from ordinary grasshoppers in their tendency to swarm, sometimes in biblical proportions, have had about 250 million years to refine their little sniffers. A single antenna or horn has 50,000 neurons and some 50 different types. So that's like our taste buds on steroids, pretty much. This makes for far more perfected and complex sensing organs and systems developed by engineers, whose doctoral research focused on electronic noses. For the past 4 years, labs have studied how those advanced biological sensors could be hijacked and coupled with modern computing power. What we did not know was something like a TNT or DNT, which has no meaning to the insects. You would not expect them to have sensors for that, but it turns out the insects do have sensors for them, and very exquisite ones, because they can pick up some of these odors at extremely low concentrations. We're talking like parts per billion and below. The new peer-reviewed study found that the tiny herbivores can distinguish not only between the vapors from explosive chemicals and ammonium nitrate, they can do so within a fraction of a second and can sense where the scent is coming from. The American locusts used in the study appear to work better as bomb sniffers when in a swarm. Data from a group of 7 bugs gave accurate results about 80% of the time, compared with about 60% on average for lone bugs. So another thing that I imagined right away was countries like Cambodia and Afghanistan, where there's unexploded ordinances killing children, innocent children, and communities. And if you could send these swarms in to find them all, that would be awesome.
Yeah, because people don't have the stomach to do it to dogs. Like like what you were saying there, whenever there was minefields in Cambodia and they trained rats to do it, because rats have the same type of smelling that dogs do, so they could do it. So they trained these rats and they would send them out, and how they did the training was they would put like cheese or meat on top of old mine. And so the rats in training they would smell that out, and then they would be able to go eat that. So the rats did this in Cambodia or in Afghanistan, somewhere like that. And they would go across the fields and then they would blow the fuck up. Like they were essentially sending these animals out to die. And we used to have it because I was at Quantico, and we actually did this training day where the TSA and some other organizations were trying to come up with an electronic nose, is what they were calling it, to see if it could pick up, because really the process of training dogs is very, very expensive. And I find the information at the bottom of this article very interesting, that they say 80%. Bomb dogs in the DOD don't get certified unless they're at 95. They have to maintain a 95% standard. So dogs are still much, much better than these locusts, but they also are at the very initial stages of this peer-reviewed study too. Right. But the robots that they would create, you would have MIT scientists and engineers and the smartest people in the world trying to do this, and a dog would come in and blow these things out of the water. Like how nature and evolution works is incredible.
Yeah. No, the fact that my first question, I read this, and my first thought is, how? How are you going to tell me you know that these locusts know what they're looking for? You know that they're looking for exactly – I get that you can train them to an extent. Or, you know, you're talking about these rats. I don't know how you do that with locusts. I guess these scientists are obviously –
a lot of experimenting.
Yeah, a lot smarter than me. And you're right, because with a dog, you'd be very sad to see a dog get blown up in a minefield. A rat – Yeah, not as bad. Locust, that's just as how often you walk down.
Well, they're not really blowing up or anything. They're just finding it. They're just swarming on.
And that's part of it. They wouldn't even have to blow up.
True, they wouldn't even have to die. They wouldn't even have to make.
So for all the locust groups out there, ready to come at us,
we don't want PETA locusts.
We don't want big locusts.
Yeah.
But imagine walking down the street, Kate, in your neighborhood of Queens, and being like, you know what? I just saw this locust swarm. I bet those motherfuckers can find bombs. Like, how does that even go into your brain? Like, that's a thing.
Well, I guess, as a scientist thinking, well, how do they know exactly where to swarm? Oh, they have these like deep innate sensors. I wonder if it works on other stuff. Like, I wonder if that's the thought process there, but it's really, really cool. I mean, they're talking about putting little cameras on bees to like go into places. Like, there's all sorts of cool shit that bugs are getting used for.
I don't know how they're doing it, but I'm happy that they are doing it.
I want to get this fella on the podcast, the guy who did it, the main scientist. I want to get him, pick his brain. And I think a lot of it just because I'm a dog handler, I'm really interested of how they do that, because those 5 explosives that they listed there, that's 5 of the 9 that we train our dogs on. So they're getting pretty far down the road of how they could do this. And if they raise that 80% to 85, I mean, it can't be that much to breed locusts. I mean, if you're doing that.
Now, picture putting a saddle on a dog and having a bunch of locusts riding the dog.
Yes.
And then they can lift him up. They're on strings.
It's almost like that song from elementary school. There's a hole in the bottom of the sea, and then it ends. There's a flea on the hair, on the floor, on the flog, on the knot, on the log.
Oh, yeah, it's like the rattling bug.
The sea. You should have a dog with a rat on its back, and the rat controls the locust.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you got to get them on the show. We have some ideas.
We're getting weirder and weirder here, but I'm here for this. But my only other thing is, you must have to train or reproduce a ton of locusts, because a dog, it goes and works for you. It knows to come back because it wants to get fed. Rats, locusts.
Except for that one time in Fallujah.
Yeah.
Shout out Robinson, lost his damn dog.
Yeah, sorry about that. But like I would think locusts, they do their job, and then they probably just fly off. I don't know how you control locusts.
Yeah, and what if you're sitting around and somebody like you're the fucking locust handler, and you got all your locusts, and somebody sees it, and you're not paying attention, you're getting yourself another Starbucks, and you're sitting there at the airport just waiting to go back to Japan. Next thing you know, some dickhead janitor comes out with Raid and starts killing all your working locusts.
Very true.
Explain that to your staff NCO.
I just kind of thought people
I'm sorry, real quickly. Do you think they name the locusts?
Oh, yeah. Well, not name. If they're going to be military, they're definitely going to have a serial number.
Yeah. They'll have a barcode on them or something. I just had a daydream where I have an ex that I'd like to torment. If I was a scientist with free time, imagine your ex walking down the street and all of a sudden just a swarm of locusts. You wait till they're on a date. Come on.
Now, do you think that would be worse, or if you train the locust or whatever, a flying insect that makes all kinds of noise, and every night you have one that goes into their bedroom and is just like buzzing around their head right when they're trying to sleep and drive them insane?
Well, one time in college, we went to the pet store and we bought a ton of crickets and we released them in the men's rugby house.
That's fucked up. Yeah.
Very loud.
So I think this is also an intimidation factor if we start utilizing locusts too, because I think there are some cultures will just think it's the plague coming back for them again.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, there is, and that is back. I mean, the plague's back big time. I mean, the locust plagues are destroying certain countries in Africa where they have millions and millions that are swarming and eating all the crops there. It's terrible. It's causing a famine in a lot of parts of the world. Let's move on to round number 3.